good to go.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. Welcome to the February 10th City Council. This is the first of our retreat sessions. I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
And clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Counselor Noon,
Here.
Counselor Galanese,
Here.
Counselor Burrell,
Here.
Counselor Peeler, Counselor Regan,
Here.
Counselor Camera,
Here.
Counselor Salamandra,
Here.
Counselor Pruitt,
Here.
Mayor Valentino.
Here. Thank you. Next, our only item on the agenda tonight, and I'm glad to see that, is the city manager's state of the city address. So I'll turn it over to Sage.
Great. So I'm going to screen share. And Adam and I chose a new platform this to work from, so bear with me. Can you all see it to go to full screen?
I can see it.
Looks
Great.
good.
Thank you. So tonight is a moment to look back to 2020 and for, on the administrative side, to share with City Council, you know, how did it go for 2020? What did our finances look like? And tonight we're focusing on celebrating wins for departments to share with you all. So we're in session 1, and that'll be this evening, and then session 2 is on Saturday starting at 9 a.m. when we will focus in on 2021 priorities. Department heads had a really good kind of retreat of their own, and then we'll be coming to you all on Saturday. We initially had a session 3 on policy and just helping to empower you all. I'm going to pause on that one for the moment. That one was scheduled for next week. We have been living in meetings, and so we're going to do 2 retreat sessions to start, and then we can, as a group, decide if there needs to be more as we continue forward. All right. So I wanted, before starting with things that we might be really grateful for, 2020 was a really hard year, and I don't want to leave in this presentation without knowing from us that, you know, we all went through a lot. The whole world went through a lot. We had things on the national, on the global level, and then also locally. Not to mention being in a pandemic, but there was a lot of division. Really a year of recognizing inequalities and social injustices in our country. A year of really adjusting for the new council and staff. And I would say we're still in that journey together of learning how to be our full selves and to really bring out the best in each other. And a year of not having a lot of human connection. I mean, look at the state of the city. Normally I would be in front of you all and I could have that, I can see you all, but it's a lot different when it's on the screen. I feel like I'm talking to myself in a room. But tonight is really a moment to reflect back, and Adam and I are going to go through the presentation. You may have questions or ideas, and I ask that you just kind of hold and write those down, but to really look at seeing the potential in ourselves and what we accomplished or how we showed up and how we were in 2020, what things that were accomplished, and then really reflecting on what we can do, really shining light on all the possibilities. And this was a quote that was shared last month to the nation and to the world, and I thought it was a fitting and appropriate for how we'd like to always move forward as we're learning to make Geneva the very best that it can be. So I'm going to pass it over to Adam, and he's going to kind of go through the 2020 financial performance for you all. Adam?
Thank you, Sage. Will you still be controlling the slides? Okay. All right. So we started off 2020 like a normal year. Nothing special happening other than a new city council. And then all of a sudden, COVID hit and we were presented with quite the challenge. We were fortunate in that it happened early in the year, so we were able to kind of plan somewhat. So what we did was we immediately put a hiring freeze in place and also a freeze on discretionary spending. And you can see here, Sage, you can go ahead and go to the next slide, that ended up paying off. We did several analysis throughout the year showing that we could come close to $1 million or $2 million in a deficit in the general fund. We ended up around 425,000, which we are happy with that. The revenues came in lower than expected, obviously, but the expenses they also came in quite a bit lower. We, for the first time that I can remember, every single department came in under budget for the year. Again, that's not just Sage and myself saying no discretionary spending. All the department heads understood where we were coming from. They knew the challenges and the struggles that we would face and did a really great job to hold back and really only take care of the things that really needed to be taken care of. So to end the year with a deficit of about 425,000, when we were expecting that maybe $1 million or $2 million more than that, we are happy with those numbers. Again, these are unaudited numbers, so subject to change, but very, very slightly. So, you shouldn't see anything very different than these numbers here tonight when we go to do our audit later in the spring. Okay, Sage. So two of the main things that we were concerned about with COVID was sales tax and state aid. So all throughout this process, we expected about a 25% decrease in state aid, in sales tax. Those are the numbers coming out of the state, coming out of the county. And we actually received sales tax at only a 2% decrease from what we expected, which is really amazing. We almost came in at what we projected at the beginning of the year in sales tax during a pandemic. So that says a lot about the county and how they were how people were still shopping and still figuring out ways to spend their money in the county. And then, partially, we have that sales tax agreement with Ontario County where we're guaranteed so much money per month. That really came into play in a situation like this. So we were very fortunate to receive sales tax at almost exactly what we budgeted when we were projecting pretty much all year to have quite a big decrease. Then moving on to state aid, in the middle of 2020, we received notification from the state of New York that local municipalities throughout the state would only be receiving 80% of their total aid. So we immediately factored that in and planned accordingly. Then about 2 months ago, we received notification that due to some better than projected revenues at the state level, we'd be receiving 95% of our 2020 aid, and that we would receive that by March of this year. So instead of receiving 80%, we're going to be receiving 95%. We have not received that yet, but we did book it as our receivable. So again, that's really great when you think about it, that sales tax and state aid, basically, if you average it out, about 5% short in each category. So very pleased with those outcomes. And on top of that, you figure all the expenses that we cut back on for 2020 as well. So those two things were huge during the COVID year. Sage. So again, our major revenues, the sales tax, you can see what we budgeted and what we came in at. Occupancy tax down quite a bit. That's obviously hotels are not just places to spend the night, but they're also event spaces. And that's really where we saw the big hit. Places like the Hampton and the Ramada and the Fairfield, when conferences would normally be there and different events that were canceled. And so all the people that booked rooms along with it had canceled. So So that took a pretty good sized hit on occupancy tax. Tax penalties, that's kind of a gamble every year. We never know if it's going to be high or low, so we try to stay kind of right in the middle. In 2020, it was somewhat low. We were pretty lenient in terms of penalty based on direction from the state, extending due dates and things like that. So that's the reason for the tax penalties. And then we mentioned state aid, excuse me. And then our sale of property, we just ended up selling more property than we had originally projected. So budget around 50,000 and we came in right around 100. We do have some more property in 2021 that we're expected to be selling. So things are looking good on that front. Sage. So expenses by department, we had already talked that each department came in under budget, but this is just a little, I'm not saying everybody came in under budget by hundreds of thousands. Some of us only made it by, $1,000 or so, but we made it. City manager just barely made it there, about $200. But it's important that to note that every department came in under budget, and it was a lot more than just being a little bit careful. It was something everybody took serious from the beginning. Then a couple more departments here. I give credit to our larger departments like police, fire, public works, where you got $2-3 million, and you can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in vehicle repair and still able to keep that under budget is really, really impressive in my opinion. So the general fund balance analysis, we started the year, so end of 19, start of 2020, we had about almost 2.3 million in fund balance. We deducted our 425 from 2020, leaving us with a balance of 1.8. Our target is around 2.4, 2.5 million. So we do have a little bit of work to do there. But I will say that we knew we were going to have work to do in that area, but we don't have as much as we thought based on the year we had in 2020. Again, it was much better than we had projected. We kind of under promise and over deliver as much as we can. And that's what happened. We budgeted very conservatively to begin the year. And then we did very conservative analysis and projections based on COVID, so that when things turned out a little bit better, we're in some better condition than we had hoped. So we do have some work to do there to build the fund balance back up, but certainly in better condition than we had originally projected back in March, April, May. So the water fund, we had a deficit in the water fund as well of a little bit less than general fund, about 409,000. And the main thing here is just the ratepayer revenue was down a little bit. Sage, if you want to go to the next slide, I think it's there. So ratepayer revenue was down. Again, that's another thing that every year we try to right size that and line up our projected consumption against whatever the water rate is. So there was a water rate increase for 21. We expect consumption to be very similar to 2020 based on restaurants and things like that being closed, and then the schedules that they're open and different businesses. So there a lot to kind of digest there with rates, but we do think that we'll have a similar year in 21 consumption wise with an increased rate. So we should see a larger number there in ratepayer revenue. And then in penalty, we did have quite a bit more than we had projected. If you notice in 2021, that budget number went from 70 to 100,000. The main reason for the big discrepancy there in budgeted versus revenue received is we had just started not doing shutoffs and red tags and instead re-levying onto property taxes. And we really didn't know how it would affect a lot of people in terms of paying their bill early or paying it on time versus paying it late. We still had, by the looks of this penalty number, we still had a lot of people paying their bills late and getting them re-levied, which is the reason for the increased penalty revenue there. The only two two main departments in the water fund, the water maintenance in DPW and the water plant, both coming in under budget, as we said before. And those are, again, two tough departments to come in under budget on when you think about water breaks and just possible malfunctions and things like that at the water plant. Every day could be a disaster, and they did a really great job of keeping things in check and maintaining a well-stocked inventory if we do have water breaks. So our water fund balance analysis, this picture is quite grim for the moment. So we started off the year with a low fund balance, and in 2020 didn't help things. So we're only at about 157,500 in fund balance, and our target is quite a bit more than that at 1.2 million. So based on what I'm seeing right now, I do expect there to be a surplus in 2021 based on the increased rates that we did in 21 for the budget and the steady consumption from 2020. So we do need to come up with a plan, and that's something I'm working on now, of possibly allocating money to the fund balance because that amount is just too low to survive another year. Hopefully we won't have too many years where there's a global pandemic, but if we do, we want to be able to survive it like we just did, and we currently wouldn't be able to do that in the water fund. So some work needs to happen there. It's something I am working on, and I will take that up with the finance committee as well and present some ideas. So the sewer fund, we're very pleased about this. We actually had a surplus in the sewer fund, which was excellent. So revenues came in higher than expected. Expenses came in lower than expected. That's always a great thing to talk about and a great thing to see. So for revenues, Sage, the next slide, please. Revenues, the ratepayer revenue came in slightly under. Again, we had another a rate increase on the sewer fund, sewer rates as well. So expect that to get very close to break even for the upcoming year. And then services for other governments. So those are things like the agreement with the town of Geneva and the town of Waterloo. So at the beginning of 2020, we had budgeted 653, 269. Some things had changed throughout the year, the way we bill and things like that. So we ended up receiving more than we projected, which ended up giving us our surplus. You'll see on the next slide that both DPW departments in the sewer fund, sewer maintenance and sewer plant, came in under budget. And again, those are, when you talk about keeping the wastewater plant running and sewer maintenance and all those kinds of things, one rainstorm can change the way we do business. So really, all those crews did a great job. Joe Venuti and DPW kept things in order, and very pleased with how things turned out there. So the sewer fund balance analysis, obviously a better picture whenever you can add to your fund balance. So we started off the year around 1.1 million, added the 158, balance of 1.2, almost 1.3. We do have a target of 1.7 million, roundabout there. So we do have some work to do in sewer as well. Mainly, you have these fund balance policies to use in case of a rainy day, and we certainly just had quite the rainy day, and so we just want to be prepared for things like this that can happen. It's not something that happens overnight, so I don't expect us to try to fund all these fund balances to their full capacity by the end of this year. Just we want to put a plan together to replenish those so that we're ready in case of another emergency. So in summary, 2020 turned out better than expected in comparison to the projections that we were putting together. I think we were doing them monthly, maybe a little more often than that. So, and we were just taking the information that we had, and we said from the beginning, and all of us were talking about it, that we wouldn't know the numbers until we actually knew the numbers. And so now we know the numbers, and we're very happy with how they turned out in comparison to what we were thinking. However, all three fund balances still need to be built back up to higher levels. We want to really devote some focus to the water fund. It's hurting, and I've said this, I feel like a million times, but one thing that has happened in the past that we really have to make sure we're not doing is offsetting rate increases with fund balance, and because this is what can happen. You hope you don't have to use the fund balance, but when you do, you can really bleed it dry, and that's kind of where we're at now. So something to think about as we talk about water sewer rates in the future. I know nobody likes to increase those, but sometimes that is necessary to do. And lastly, with a hold on discretionary spending, we're able to offset many of the decreases in revenue to maintain a slight decrease, with the exception of the sewer fund, which had a surplus. And again, very proud to have a surplus in the sewer fund. Typically, water and sewer, we haven't had surpluses the last few years. And so in a year like this, to have one in the sewer fund is really something. And so we're very pleased about that.
Thanks, Adam.
I think that's all I have for now.
Great. We're going to go over some department wins. I'm going to start with just running a city during a pandemic. Really proud of every single staff member. We quickly put together a working protocol, and it was a lot of work at the beginning to get all the memorandum of understandings together to figure out each department had different needs. So for example, in Public Works, we had different shift team approaches so that you would be able to still have people working if a whole team got quarantined. So you think about our wastewater and our water treatment plant, that worked really well there. That's still in place to make sure that we are able to operate our public work needs. So that's one example of that. Remote working, we still have some of that in place. We never want to be in a position where everybody's out on quarantine at one time. And so we've been rotating. At the beginning, many of us were working remotely, and now we're shifting to schedules at City Hall so that we can always guarantee that people will be here. But all of those efforts took a lot of time. There were a lot of unknowns, and people just dived in, worked together, put together the safety procedures. When we came back to work, there were a lot of mandates and, of course, things that we wanted to do, cleaning protocols that are still in place to make sure that we could work here safely. And in many different situations, you think about in our fire trucks, in our police cars, in our public work vehicles, not only just in the office spaces. And then the meeting accommodations, everybody had to participate in that. Our residents had to get used to how do you Zoom, how do you watch YouTube, how do you turn on and listen and connect with everybody when you can't go and physically see folks. And so we have bumps on the road, of course, but being able to shift and learn new ways of meeting and connecting has been important. Again, the expense reduction, I won't belabor that, but that was something that really took a lot of time on the finance department to constantly be running those financial projections. They do that anyway during the year, but with all the unknowns of revenue and expenses, that was something that really needed to happen. During the furlough time, people that were still working were taking on extra work to get everything moving and running smoothly. And folks that were furloughed, that is also a stressful situation, can be as well. And then, as Adam mentioned, discretionary spending, really being calculated in what you were spending funds on. I would be remiss if I didn't give a huge shout out to not only Connect Geneva, but so many community partners that just shifted their way of doing work of saying, we're going to put together these volunteer efforts. City staff supported, but it is and still is being led by our community partners and volunteers. I think about the Boys and Girls Club shifting to delivering meals, and we're helping make connections with FoodLink or help to connect them to Cornell and to bring milk and cheese in, but they are the ones doing the heavy lifting, and there are so many agencies doing so many wonderful things. A lot of our departments, O&I and Rec, doing the food distribution with FoodLink and working with the county too, has been something that was really meaningful for our team. And then the county and state collaborations, just really working together to be up to speed on the mandates. It was directed to our co-department to be the educators, but also the enforcers on all the COVID mandates. And that took a lot of time. People, would see something come out and what does that actually mean for my business, and a lot of good work there. We're gonna go through some of the focus areas for you all with the finance, really wanting to decrease the property tax rate and increase revenue. And I know that in a year of a pandemic, having our assessed values increase was not easy for our residents, as we were looking to not be able to really, on the staff level, roll the tax rate back. You all did achieve that, but it's something to celebrate in the sense that we've been on a journey to be able to bring value for our property so that people will invest in it, and glad that we are on the upswing instead of the journey that we were on a decade ago of really decreasing in our value of our properties. Think about Lake Tunnel Solar Homes and what they just accomplished in adding 3.1 million in assessed value to our community. And in addition, a new neighborhood, a new place, a new sense of camaraderie here in downtown. And then, as I mentioned, you all did achieve your goal. I don't think as much as you really wanted to do, but you did lower the tax rate. On the beautification committee, you can see the goal that you're shooting for, and I'm going to talk about short-term wins. One thing I wanted just to highlight was the portraits of the high school seniors. That was really special. That was a sense of, the beauty of our youth being out there in our community and really celebrating them. Adopting a new complaints intake process that was much more coordinated, and we're still, educating folks to go through that process so that we can track better, and it doesn't just go to one employee, they handle it, and we don't get to see the cumulative effect of what's coming in. The DRI Streetscape project was designed in 2020 and went through the permitting process and is about to get ready to go out to bid to contractors. And then must always say we did, amazing improvements on the lakefront, and boy, does it take a lot of work to keep those plants up. And so, we had the Green Committee and other volunteers that have really stepped up. We even had internal, staff volunteers weeding as well. And I know Public Works really appreciated it, and we appreciate all the efforts from DPW as well that's on the lakefront. Under economic development, I'm going to share a couple different directions and strategies. So one of them that's been really long going, at least over a decade, and is that really focusing in on downtown as a nimble economic engine, and wanted to share some of the short-term wins that happened in 2020. So the Dove Block, our DRI grant, was completed. The capital projects, there was a lot of delay when construction sites were shut down, but they caught back up and were able to finish that, and now has a new ownership. And so we worked through them with that on the IDA front, and then just on the grant side to make that completion done. There were additional building rehab projects for the DRI that were completed. And we are actually, I think for that granting agency, the first DRI project to be completed, which is fun. And for our New York Main Street grant, 5 of the 13 were completed in 2020. And as I mentioned for the streetscapes, and one thing I didn't say before is the Public Art Committee really worked hard to put a call out and find a really fantastic artist. You can see the work on our budget, what will be coming on our bike shelters when they get constructed. And another thing, one of the pieces of our streetscape is green infrastructure. And so we're going to have all this beautiful amenities that creates a sense of place that makes people want to linger and stay in downtown. But it will also be cleaning the water, storm waters that come through before it heads to the lake. And HWS is on board to help us with that monitoring and upkeep and care. So also on our downtown strategy, and I'm mentioning these, but these grants were also citywide. Predominantly downtown businesses were the applicants and received them, but it was a citywide 2 programs. One, as you know, is a small business disaster grant, which O&I kind of creatively retooled with the state to be able to offer to respond to COVID, and we had local partners matching that. And then the second one was the 2018 Micro Enterprise Awards were completed, and 2019 awardees were selected in 2020. Another one to just note is our strategy of neighborhood investment and placemaking. And that investment comes from both the city side, city government side, but also from really inspiring and having our residents lead as well. So the zoning update is in progress, and that really does shine a light on increasing housing opportunities, and we'll be completing that process in 2021. The housing reassessment did add value for homeowners and be able to provide equity for them to take advantage of if they so choose. The vacant property work through the Zombie Grant and with Katie's efforts, along with Legal Aid of Western New York, and has really given us an opportunity to focus in on some of our blight in our neighborhoods that have been of great concern to many residents. And then just participating with the Connect Geneva Housing Subcommittee. I think that has been very beneficial for us to kind of start getting back into the housing world. We've gone on different journeys throughout time, investing, getting grants, and in the last few years, our focus has been downtown. And so that has been really important to get to know what's important to our community partners and our residents. Another one, as you know, we gave a presentation in January, but our food and beverage industry, we are really leaning into that thanks to having a dedicated manager of those efforts, and that's through the Center of Excellence being able to lean in with us on that. We're also celebrating getting a federal EDA grant for the second tech farm building, which will be 20,000 square feet of new processing space. And with our food and beverage industry, there is a new brand that will be unveiled soon and a marketing kind of approach to really elevate our journey to be a destination. And last, just always important to us is leveraging our partners. We are lucky to have our own Geneva IDA. We are lucky to have our own local development corporation and other partners. And we like to utilize them, HWS and FLCC and Cornell Agritech. And so wanted just to highlight, we do have a new GEDC management firm. And Adam and I are thrilled to be working with them and their vision for the GEDC. HWS, didn't have to refinance and do their bond through our local development corporation, but they chose to, and that brought in $183,000 of revenue that they can now reinvest in Geneva. The Gateway parcel has a path for development that we'll see coming in 2021 and working towards that becoming into fruition. And then wanted to also just mention Ontario County. They work with us all the time, whether they're helping to provide financial analysis for us or business retention support to recruitment. And that's always something important for us to leverage and also be grateful for. The other strategy is really activating our recreational placemaking spaces, really making this a quality place to live. Because if you want to live here, then it's a great place to visit as well. So the North End resident access to the lake and recreational amenities grant kind of got stalled out with COVID. This is the first time that we didn't move forward prior to getting a grant contract executed because we were concerned that they may put a halt on those funds. They did not. That contract was secured and that is being moved forward. Wanted to just mention the 2 community initiatives. There are more that we participate in, but the Abandoned Railway Trail, this is a project that is both in the town and city of Geneva, and the group of volunteers working on that are working in lightning speed, and Councillor Pruitt has been really active in those endeavors too. Also a nod to the Crystal Street Garden as well, and there are other garden efforts throughout the city, and we want to be just really grateful that people are seeing what we're needing and then feeling empowered to be able to activate those in our city. We did go through the public beach feasibility study, and there's still more work to be done with all of you and decisions to be made, but that has been the long-standing kind of question in our community, a wish that we would like to have, and we didn't get all the news that we wanted, but at least we have a clearer picture on what is possible and what is not possible. For the marina, the design and the permitting continued in 2020 and getting us ready to really have an accurate picture of the cost so that you all can make that decision. And then Ridgewood Field improvements. It doesn't always sound fun to say new storm sewer pipe, but if you play soccer on that field or you go to watch somebody, you will know that is something that was much needed and kind of ended the whole project at Ridgewood of the walking trails and the amenity improvements that have been already made there. All right, so going into some of the department wins, I wanted to do a shout out to the city clerk's office. The first floor customer service, if you think about it, when COVID came out and we got back into in-person times, there still is a lot of unknowns of transmission, and that team really stepped up and tried to deliver, and still does, every day, and provide that service. A lot of council meetings. That is something that is a long haul, and to keep that momentum with all of you, that's something that just like whew. And for Lori to be rehashing, think we have 45 meetings. How many times did she re-listen to all those meetings in order to provide the minutes for everybody? Finance department, Adam already shared, coming in under budget, doing a remote audit. If you haven't experienced the audit process, it is very tactile and they come in and a lot of intense time, and to be able to accomplish that remotely and do it well was a huge thing that I'm really proud of them for. We also made some efficiency improvements this year. You can now do the online property tax payments, and really having access to our payable records that are digital and is an improvement for us. We're coming into the new age. We have more goals under that front, but we have some wins from 2020. In my office, I wanted just to reflect on some other things that haven't been spoken to before. We had a lot of hard conversations, and we had to make a lot of new connections. And that kind of learning from when our intent and our impact collided led us to some new learnings and some new teachings. And that's something that's always really important to me in my role, not only as a city manager, but my own journey in life of really being conscious of when my intent and my impact doesn't line up. And then also just really leaning into when I need to learn new things and need to have hard conversations. Erica's also reinvigorating the fair housing officer role, and that is something to celebrate. So when Karen Bear and we had an office that was really running fully, that was in full form. And then over the last decade, we were doing our fair housing role, but it wasn't really serving the needs in our community. And so that has been reinvigorated. A lot of new connections are being made. And so excited to have that be a more valuable resource than it has been in a good long time. And then facilitating the police reform collective and plan, that the governor does mandate. We have another emergency services plan mandate that I don't think I put on the HR win, but that gets kind of handed down to us, and really proud of both Erica and our police department for taking it on and really providing it the due time needed for that. And and it'll continue in 2021. A few things for O&I, just having 17 grants in motion, and I probably missed one or two. That's a lot. Everyone needs reporting, all have different requirements. And if you think about, those are all initiatives that we're trying to get accomplished here in the city. And all Katie and Jessica did a lot of work trying to build community organization partnerships and keep those going during COVID, which I think is so important. And doing, meaningful virtual resident and partner engagement meetings was something that we really had to get used to and find new ways. If you think about the zoning, they did the online presentations, and that came with mixed reviews. That was the first time the consultants had ever done that. And having to adjust and tweak. I'll put a plug for the zoning meeting that's happening tomorrow night at 6 o'clock for residents. But all those things are learning experiences and figuring out what works well and what doesn't work well and adjusting. And so a lot of that was happening in 2020. HR, the process for 50A foils is arduous. It takes a lot of time, and it was all new materials. And as we are coming out with 50A foils, other communities were starting to do it, have reactions. And so we still are working on a process that is efficient, as it takes a lot of time, a lot of resources from HR, from our police department, from our admin staff, from our department head staff to really get those achieved. And so we're wanted to just celebrate the hard work that went in, and just also acknowledge that there's a lot to still do in 2021. As I mentioned, the emergency plan that has been developed that is really focused on pandemics, but it'll be helpful for other things as well. As we mentioned in the budget process, wellness initiatives are not only beneficial for our own well-being, but it's really critical for health insurance rates. And so that was something that continued and was successful with. And then a lot of staff support that had to be done remotely, retirement, succession planning, a lot of questions on benefits that were a lot more difficult to do this year. For IT, wanted to shout out that we had to go remote really quickly, and we don't have a lot of extra computers, extra laptops, just hanging out, and to be able to get everyone up and running, to get them into the remote, have remote access to their files. Peter and Zach did a just tremendous job. On the recreation side, we are running the ice rink and making improvements with a very, very small team. And so that was huge to see. How do you operate in COVID? How do you actually get work done and serve the needs at the same time? And so they are right now still doing a good job with it, but that took a lot of adjustment. And then in the summertime, there was shift to helping out our public works department. They were short with people, and that's just a really good example of kind of our cross-department collaborations. So Public Works, we have a new director, and that, we had Mark Perry finishing up, as well as other retirements in engineering and highway and sewer that were all trying to get work, trying to teach and learn and transfer knowledge. And that was a lot for the Public Works Department, and it went so well. And we are grateful to have Joe on board, and miss our old staff members, but glad that they're off in retirement, enjoying themselves as well. And all of the departments have really pitched in. There's a lot of cross learning there to get everyone up to speed. And folks, you have Neil that's taken on the engineering hat in addition, in a really response to needing to keep the budget really slim. But that does put a strain on your own well-being when you're adding somebody else's job on top of your job. Additional COVID-19 cleanings, a lot of in-depth cleanings, stuff that was not necessarily, in our daily routine that had to be added. A lot of permits and complaints that were things with tree complaints, grass, trash, toters, snow. So a lot of things that had to be followed up on. A lot of sidewalk inspections that have come from a policy change. And another thing is that, we don't always celebrate the mundane, but all the maintenance programs got done. What was on their to-do list, which is huge. I wanted to mention something at our water treatment plant of really developing a plan. The harmful algal blooms is becoming more and more of a year of an issue. They're on top of that. They're participating in the Seneca watershed group as well, but they're really doing a lot of proactive preventative measures there. Lafayette Avenue is under construction. That's enough to be celebrated. When we took on the DRI projects, that project got bumped. It is messy over there, but they're working hard to really do the underground work so that in the warmer months, the surface work can be completed. The Vermicycle facility was built as well. And we had a belt press project in the wastewater treatment plant that was much needed and got completed as well. Just a few shout outs in the fire department. Both the fire and the police department have a lot of training that they have to do. And being able to do that remotely was huge. If you think about the fire department, it's not only their team, but it's all the volunteers. You can see the amount of hours there. A lot of calls for service that still had to be handled, fires and hazmat calls that had to be taken care of. Over 500 inspections, and we halted on doing inspections for a good number of months due to COVID, and so they definitely did catch right up. I've still had to do fire prevention. That's still an important endeavor, and had to learn how to do it differently this year, and as well as doing the fire drills at the school safely. On the police department, getting that accreditation submission is a huge success. It's a lot of work. A lot of details go into that. And this year was already full, and they did that successfully. They handled over 35,000 calls for service. They also had to switch to do a lot of their mandatory training virtually, and they did that successfully. And then just working on the police collective and doing that facilitation and that behind the scenes homework for requests for policy changes also was done well. And then supported you all. You asked for the participation for the body camera task force and the budget boards to sit on that and provide insight as well. And so just a fun picture. I'm just grateful for everyone. And this was community wide of being helpful and being resourceful and being adaptive this year and really stepping in to help. And then fun. I often don't remember to have fun or infuse fun, and I'm glad that folks at City Hall know and with our other departments know how to do that. So there's a great picture of just going out and doing all the ride-alongs for the different events or for the holidays. And that is all. I'm going to stop the share. And that is Adam and mine and our kind of department state of the city reflection back on 2020.
Quite a year, Sage. Thank you very much. I appreciate all the information and updates. It's interesting when you look back at the year and you kind of compile all the accomplishments, and it has been a challenging year. So I think you're open for questions. Is that where we're at? I see your hand, Councilor Gallinese. Go ahead.
Will we be getting a copy of your PowerPoint presentation?
You
Can you
sure
email?
can. Sure, I will definitely do that.
And then I also would like to ask, we have a list of a PowerPoint presentation on all the wins that we did, but do we have a list of all the losses for the year?
We do not. No, we don't have a list.
Is there a way that we could maybe have a short list of things that you feel you didn't achieve going into 2021 from 2020? Doesn't have to be extensive, but just something of goals, personal goals that you and Adam and staff had that you feel as though you couldn't achieve, and the reason why. And I think that would be helpful too.
Adam, I have a
What we
question.
learned.
Oh, Councilor Cameron, did you have something you wanted?
Just that as part of that, what did we learn?
Adam, my question is related to state aid because we mentioned that 95% for 2020 by March 2021. Help me understand when we normally get those state aid payments.
Yeah, so typically we get our 1.9 million. We typically get about 200,000 in October, and then we get the remainder in December. So this year we got our normal amount in October, and then we got our remaining balance minus the 20% in December, with a note basically that said we'll be receiving the next 15%, 15 of the 20 by March of 21, which is obviously coming up. Now, where does that leave us for 21? We're still under the impression that we're getting 80% of our state aid for 21. We have not heard different. We budgeted that way. So that's obviously a good situation to be in, that there's a chance we could receive more than we had originally budgeted. But for now, we're not banking on that. We haven't heard otherwise.
Councilor Pruitt, I see you, but I got one more question if you guys don't mind. And that was, you said that all departments came in under budget, but I did notice that the legal line was over budget.
Mhm.
But you didn't say nothing about it.
No. So that's my fault. I don't consider that its own department just because we don't have a department head for it. But yes, attorney fees, legal fees did come in over. There were a handful of out of the ordinary, I'll say, things that popped up internally that had to be addressed that were, I would say, unavoidable at the time. So on top of our normal contractor agreement that we have with Midday, Mirris, and Ricky, there were some costs to Hancock Esterbrook for some outside services as well.
Okay. I might continue later, but I'm going to go to Council Pruitt.
I just wanted to clarify something that they were just talking about. That's the 15% extra aim that we'll be getting from the state. Does that, and you said it's a receivable, does that post to 2020 or will that post to 2021?
2020.
Well, so that, oh, great. And then also, I think following up to what Frank had said, which I think is good, it's good to see what you would like to have gotten accomplished that you didn't. But I think I'd like to add on to that, if you could tell us what you'd like to see from council that you haven't seen this past year. Perhaps some pointers that you'd, some goals or objectives you'd like to see us accomplish. That would be, I think, good to hear. Thank you, folks.
I see Councilor Galanese again, unless Councilor Salamandra. Let me go to Councilor Salamandra. She hasn't spoken. Councilor Burrow, Councilor Galanese. I'll come back around. I see. All right. So I'm doing Councilor Salamandra, Councilor Burrow, Councilor Peeler.
It said we were a little bit over, you had negotiated a higher usage rate for water or sewer. Adam, you're nodding, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Last year, I've been really adamant that I wanted to see those rates go up, like a new contract with the usage. Is that finalized? Can we expect to see that renegotiated this year? I would like.
Yeah,
So,
we are in the middle of trying to go back to a rate. We don't currently have a rate, we have a percentage. And so that is still in the works, but we will be coming to you all with that because that will be a more difficult journey to do. And so you'll be seeing that for 2022.
there's also the town of Waterloo is also figured into those numbers. And we, within the last couple of years, we were kind of going back and forth with them on their rate, their percentages. And that was finally, it had already been agreed to, but we were behind a couple of years. They were in paying and things like that. We finally got all that squared away. And so we weren't sure where the projections would leave us. We did under budget for that revenue, which is a positive, but we're much more in tune with where we expect to receive those funds in 21.
And just a quick follow-up. So that so is it already established what we had talked about prior this year about new capital projects having a higher rate, and that is all already done, or that's part of the new journey? I can do it by email.
No. That's a part of that'll be a part of the new
journey stage rest.
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to be involved in that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Councilor Burrow, Councilor Peeler, and then Councilor Regan. I see a Councilor
Yeah.
Galanese, but let me go around.
I want to second Frank's comment. I'm equally as interested in the things that were not successes as the wins are. Most managers get more out of making improvements on where we did not win than to just hear about the wins. So I'm very interested in that. And then if we could get a breakdown on the city attorney side, on the number, just as a reminder, on the number of hours or the contract that we have with our current law firm and the overtime hours we pay to them, as well as a breakdown on the number of hours that we pay to other counsel. I think that would be helpful as we plan going forward and when we desire to choose outside counsel for more specialty items. And then a quick question for Adam. When the county tells us about our sales tax, which is very, very exciting, do they give you a breakdown on the sales tax that's generated from internet sales as opposed to sales in the county?
Right now, the report they give us is based off of what sales are generated within the city of Geneva and then within the county as a whole. They don't, on the report, they don't give a breakdown of internet sales, but I believe it's something they can provide and I can get that information.
That would be very interesting to know, especially moving forward with something that Councilor Peeler asked at our work session, helping the BID and marketing the importance of purchasing local from supporting local labor as opposed to buying on the internet. So I'm very interested in that data.
Yep, I will reach out and gather that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Peeler and Councilor Regan.
Microphone working okay?
Yep.
Excellent. Two questions for clarity. One of them was a follow-up to Frank's request for essentially the things that we didn't do well, or I guess would be more appropriately to call like a SWOT analysis, like what were our weaknesses of last year or something to that extent. But for a follow-up, when, I don't know how long it took to put together that PowerPoint. So I can only imagine that inverted PowerPoint, one that talks about our weaknesses. How long do you think we can anticipate to expect that data?
Well, I'd love to have input from department heads, so I'll be reaching out to them to be able to put that together with us.
Okay, I have Counselor Regan, then Counselor Galanese, and then Counselor Salamandra.
I had another part to the.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. The second question was a little information about the economic development management firm, the GEDC. I believe I don't recall, but is it Metro that was awarded the management?
Webster Properties, but they also have in their portfolio Metro Collective, correct? And that's in partnership with 29 Design Studio.
Who is the individual that's the actual manager?
So Miles Webster is the boots on the ground. Craig Webster is from Webster Properties. And then Maureen Ballatori is also here in Geneva.
And that's the same management firm that manages Port 100?
Well, different in a sense. 29 Design Studio is one of their partners, but 29 Design Studio, who manages, yes, Port 100, is more the design, the branding, the marketing side of it. Webster Properties is a more development company of an adaptive reuse projects.
So who's actually managing our economic development?
So they manage the facility, so they handle all of the leases, the recruitment there, the marketing of that building that is owned by the Industrial Development Agency, and work with us on when a company wants to come in and is looking for economic development incentives. They also handle all the day-to-day operations, improvements, emergencies, tenant needs. That's the role of the manager of that facility.
And that's Miles Webster?
Yeah, it's Webster Property. So there's a team there. So there's also others that help depending on what the issue is. But Miles Webster is more the boots on the ground that is there.
Thank you. And just to be, and how much longer was the term for Port 100 to receive the Ontario County grant that they received so they could keep staying in operation? Was that a 4-year agreement or a 3-year agreement?
They got funding to do some in-house improvements. So they had a physical improvement and then some, I think, marketing. And I don't know off the top of my head. I think they're in either finished the first year or the second year. And I believe it was a 3-year.
And that was, yeah, okay. And that was through the Ontario County Economic Development?
It was, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Regan?
Yeah, I have kind of two areas as well, or however many. One is on the occupancy tax. My understanding of that has been in the past that much of it goes to the county and to tourism. So I'm curious what portion of that does come to us. And along with that, this isn't my second question, but it's still under occupancy tax. We've talked in the past about including Airbnbs and VBROs in that. And I understand that's also has something to do with the county, but I'm curious whether any progress has been made on that.
Yep. So for occupancy tax, each hotel or motel, I'll say any establishment that qualifies to pay occupancy tax, they pay 3% to the county and 3% to the city. So we get 3% of the sales, of the room sales. So the county gets their 3%. I believe they may earmark their 3% towards tourism. Ours is just back into our general fund. It isn't earmarked towards anything specifically. And then in terms of the bed and breakfast and the Airbnbs, I believe, and Sage, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that we were incorporating that into our zoning rewrite so that we could expand who qualifies. I know counties around us have done the same thing where they've either not done it by room but by length of stay. or you can do it by room. Right now, we're at 3 or more, or I believe it's anything over 3. And we would like to bring that number down a little bit so that it's incorporating anyone who's renting out a room.
Great. So that's kind of in the works. I mean, that's a possibility for fairly quickly to be instated.
Yeah, that's something we are currently working on.
That's great. Just one other quick question, and I wrote this down, but I'm just curious about the ice rink. There was a mention of the good work of ice rink management, but it has been closed, which is of concern to me. And so I guess, a little explanation there, but also if there's any potential looking ahead to establish some sort of a reservation for use of the ice rink. I just think of the Y, which manages the pool in that way. You reserve it ahead of time. In the case of the ice rink, you could actually pay online or whatever. Just to limit the number of people and make them wear masks, etc. Maybe not rent out the skates, but if anything like that could be considered.
So that has been thoroughly considered. So it is a daily operation. So we have the youth hockey, the high school, and HWS, and Dave is on this call too. So we're operating with Dave and Dave, and then Liz on the part-time basis, because she also does other things for rec. So they're spending most of their time living there, essentially, to be able to facilitate those rentals and the revenue. And so Dave really wanted to open up, and we have him speak to I wanted to open up for the public skate, but we don't see how we can just physically do it this year with the restrictions and the time and additional hours. We're not doing part-time staff at this moment. So that was mentioned at the council meeting. We didn't get to have in depth more of the time, but the schedule is intense for that management of the hockey teams have to separate. They have to be in groups. They can't do it as they are now. It is meaning more ice rental revenue than expected for us for that, but it is a downside because it is a public skating, and we have our public members who have to be part of a hockey program to take advantage of it. So Dave, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add, if you can be heard.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Good.
No, I appreciate the question. It's been very difficult. We were definitely hoping to open, around between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and, the spike started coming on at that time. And it's, keeping in communication with the county in the other facility that's similar in the county, which is Canday West Civic Center. They have stayed closed, and we're being cognizant of that as well. But with no part-time staff, we're really at a max staff-wise to be able to make it fiscally financially sound, and also doable for our staff to do it outside this mountain. We are making money at this time for the facility, and the facility is operating well. So bringing out in public into the facility, outside public into the facility is very iffy at this, and maybe not financially responsible in this time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilor Galanesian and Councilor Salamandra.
I just had a couple other, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I have a couple more questions for staff. Is it possible that we could get a list of employees that were with us in 2020, and if they either retired, left, whatever, the numbers of each department of how many we usually staffed compared to now going into 2021. Also a breakdown of, did we meet or exceed the overtime that was projected for the police department and fire department? And then also ONI, you stated back in your PowerPoint presentation that there was 17 grants in motion. If we could have a list of those, and what are they for?
Sure, and most of those are in those project updates, but I'll send those out in a full list.
And then one more thing. you mentioned that the police department is furthering new training, mandatory, or maybe the chief is asking that we do new training. Is there a way that we can get a list of the new training that they're doing now compared to last year and the years past?
All set?
I got one more question. You also stated in the PowerPoint presentation that Erica was working on a fair housing officer role. Could you go into a little bit of detail and explain, what that entails?
Yep. So we are obligated by the federal government with our community development block grants to have a fair housing officer, which we have had all this time, but there is a range of opportunity to be able to serve our community well that we didn't have as much resources before, but is an important component to do. And so the fair housing officer is well versed in when there is some kind of fair housing issue and is more the conduit to get the resident to the right resources and be able to document what might be occurring in our community and that it is properly handled. So she does not have to be the one that is making any kind of determinations, but she is part of that process to make sure that there is a clear path for a resident to be able to have issues addressed. And we can go into it more detail because it is specific, so it's not just a full vote of every issue. Our code department there may be some things that our code department takes versus her, but we could get more detail to you too if you're interested.
And then one last question. I know that our DPW is understaffed right now, and I know that there is a hiring freeze. I would like to know, what are our plans going into springtime? Because I do believe we're going to, I think that some of the positions that we haven't filled are grounds, lawn mowing and stuff like that. And what's the plan going forward as of right now, down those 2 or 3 individuals? And exactly how many is DPW down right now?
Okay. Is that good, Counselor?
Yep, thank you.
Counselor Salamandra?
Okay, just a couple of things. I am very glad, Sage, to hear you talking about Erica as the fair housing officer. When I first got into this job, recognized that that was a position in the charter. I've been talking closely with Erica over the past year, and it is so important that the city understand what is actually going on in the housing in Geneva. And so Erica has been great at that, and I'm very excited about it. Occupancy tax. Can we up the rate on Airbnbs? And what staff person would I talk to about that?
So sorry.
That's
So
just something that I'm interested in doing.
we are maxed out at our rate of 3%.
Okay.
But we currently charge them nothing based on what we're doing currently. So we are looking to get, like I mentioned before, we are looking to get that law changed and updated with the zoning so that we can charge the 3% to anyone renting out a room, not just.
Okay, maybe Adam, you and I can talk about
Yeah,
that so I can understand it more clearly. I guess I'm not getting it, but
Okay,
we
yeah,
can talk
that's
on the
fine.
phone if everyone
Yep.
else gets it.
That works.
Okay. The ice rink, is there a way to use it in the summer to make profit in the summer? And I know that I've heard that the hockey and the COVID restrictions is making it really hard, but it seems that we could be making some revenue when hockey's not in season.
So it becomes turf in the summertime. And this last year, the YMCA actually took it over for the year to be able to offer their camp to our young people and be able to have more space, use their facility, and then use our facility. So it does get rented out in a typical year and either has our summer camps or other camps too. So yes, there are revenue opportunities with the turf down.
Okay. And then just one last thing. I recognize Councilor Galanese and Councilor Burrow's like desire to hear what we could improve on. But as this is not a private business, I'm concerned about how Sage will go about giving a list of losses. So I like to hear it discussed as weaknesses, but I'm just think that that should be more discussed, and we need to give clear direction to staff, because a list of losses in a city is, I mean, I can't even begin to think about what that would look like. So I don't know if you feel like you need more direction, but if like each department had something that they, or like a department came up with something that they had wanted to do and didn't do, but I'm not really sure how to measure a loss. And I think that's kind of an impossible demand for you.
Sage and Adam, I got a quick one, and I see Councilor Regan and Councilor Pruitt. Mine has to do with just the water bill penalty. We did great with that, right? So I did have a couple of constituents that had concerns on notice. So now when the water bill's late, we just attach it to the tax bill. The challenge was that there's people who own rental property, and they don't get a notice, from what I understand, until they see their tax bill and they say, oh, geez, you know, I'm late on water. And it might be the responsibility of the renter at that point. And all the request is before or as it gets attached to the tax bill, that the taxpayer gets a notification. That was a request I had.
Okay.
Councilor Regan, then Councilor Pruitt.
Yeah, I kind of thought we were at the end. I wanted to add a little positive note that was not on the pluses, and it goes to DPW in that we did initiate a ban on synthetic pesticides, which they took on graciously, and have even met with members of both the Green Committee and Town Sustainability to try and incorporate successful. So that's a little plus that is much appreciated.
Thank you for that. Councilor Pruitt, then Councilor Peeler. I do see you in the dark raising your hand, and Councilor Camera. Okay.
Thank you. I had two questions. One gets back to something Tom was asking about, and that was sales tax. DiNapoli's office just reported that the state was down 1.8 billion rather in sales tax revenue in general, but he was also reporting on the impact of sales tax from online or internet sales. He said it went from 16.1% in 2019 up to 27% last year. So it jumped up 11 percentage points, and I think it's going to continue to go up from there. I think the reason I'm mentioning that is I think he often breaks it down by county in case somebody could really dig that deep into it. You might be able to get to find out what it is for this county. And I also wanted to comment on the presentation that was just given by the city managers. I have to say, I was really enamored with the presentation, number one, how well organized it is and how well it was presented. But most importantly, I think the material that was in that. I'm thinking back on where we were a year ago and the goals that we set and the goals that were set by the prior council. And I'd have to say, if I were really handing out raises and awards, I'd be giving it out to our city managers, our department managers, and every employee that contributed to these fine results this past year. Far more than I thought could have been done under the circumstances. When has anybody ever faced, at least in our lifetime, this kind of challenge in a municipal government, where you've got a global pandemic, your money's being squeezed out of you from every source, sales tax, housing revenue, the state, everywhere, and yet still able to juggle the balls well enough to come up with as good a results as we just saw. It's absolutely astronomical, in my opinion, and my hat's off to you. Just wanted to say so.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Councilor Pruitt. That is, well, I'll echo that, I hope. Councilor Peeler, and then Councilor Campbell.
City manager, is there any way, and I don't know if that's if it's just too much to kind of consider at the moment, is there any way to confirm the concern that Councilor Salamandra just had? Because it was a legitimate concern. Do you think that she's correct? There's no way to really itemize, or, I mean, I think weaknesses is the correct way to brand it or to describe it as well. But do you think it'll be impossible to produce that type of report that Councilor Galanese, Councilor Burrell, Councilor Pruitt, and myself are talking about?
It is an opportunity for each department to be able to share with you where their frustrations were. I don't know if it'd be an exhaustive list. I do appreciate Councilor Salamandra's just awareness of time and energy. But I think that, we can come up with items that, rise to the top for us of concerns and lessons learned. We're always trying to do that reflection. So I was going to take it where we would find the ones that were most important to us to be able to share with you all.
Thank you.
Council Camera.
Thank you. Well, on that whole thing about lessons learned, I mean, I would really like, I don't think we learned the lesson on the zoning. The reason or the rationale that was proffered was the slow pace of zoning was not the reason the Legion project failed. And I disagree. If we had set aside the zoning plan, not to necessarily not do it, but and made a deal as fast as we could, and we were ready to deal. We were ready to make a deal. We'd have done it a year ago before COVID made an impression on this developer so that they changed their business plan. So I disagree with this. It wasn't the zoning. And what I'd like to see is a sense of urgency in getting this city out of its financial troubles. And that's by making projects happen. So that's one of the things. We've talked about some of those things in the past. I won't get into that. I would like to ask a question also, and maybe I should know the answers to these questions, but we've got the GEDC and it's got a bunch of tenants in it. And so what is the basic value proposition? We incubate a business in there for a couple of years. They get really low rent and they don't pay taxes. And then they get they establish themselves and then they move into the community and pay regular taxes. What is the operating mission that you're trying to accomplish there? And how much does the GEDC generate in revenue annually for the general fund?
So just in a short set, it is not a revenue generating operation at this very moment. That is the hope and the goal of the new management company, to be able to have it sustain itself and grow. The businesses, some have incubated and grown. Some, like Real Eats, role is trying to grow around the kitchen, grow within the GEDC, and may expand there. But if that is, it is off the tax rolls because it is a building that is owned by the IDA. City facilities, so our Public Works has a facility there. We operate out of there at a reasonable, fair rate of rent, under, I believe, market value for our operations there. But the immediate goal is to make sure the companies are thriving in there, but that the GEDC is at, being able to sustain itself on its own. And that is the current focus for the IDA, to have it be sustainable. That is of question at this very moment.
So when let's say it, I don't know, let's say it operates it collects all these rents or whatever it does. It generates some income, right?
It does, and it
From the city.
Right now the income is being rejuvenated back into the building. It's an old building, and so that
Right.
is currently what is the improvements are being reinvested into the building.
Okay. So it's operating at a loss. Is there a ballpark number? Is it $100,000 a year?
We will have a clearer picture soon with this new management company, a snapshot. We had a lot of emergency repairs that were done in the last couple of years. And so the IDA will be getting a clearer picture with this new management company, where we stand on that.
Yeah, can we though, Sage, look back at a year or two and just see what we lost? And so we have an idea of the magnitude of the loss to the taxpayers. And then,
You mean that, so there's a difference. The taxpayers do not gain revenue from property tax because it is owned by the industrial development.
right, and the IDA doesn't pay us anything.
Correct. We are a tenant in the building as a city.
So all we do right now is just pay them the IDA money.
We pay them for usage of one of the spaces in the GEDC.
Okay. So is it possible that we could talk to the IDA, given the situation the city's in, and say, that might be a courtesy the IDA should give to the city and its taxpayers?
You could, if they were able to sustain the building. It's always an ask that you can do.
Okay, so that's something that I'd be interested in.
Yep, and you're the liaison, so we can
in
schedule
developing-
time with the executive committee and you to be able to talk.
Say that again?
As the liaison, we'll schedule time with you and the executive committee and we can have that discussion.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
The other thing I want to ask is, I would like to put the whole fire engine acquisition behind us, but the last thing I asked for a couple of, a week ago or something was, Tom Burrow gave us a sort of a TED talk on what the ISO is and what it means and what its impact is on the city, insurance and things. And I asked that we put it on the website, our city website. We don't have to make a big deal of it, but I just think it should be a place on this, when we go to click on the fire department, there should just be a thing that says insurance standards, organization, rating, rules explained. And if somebody wants to look at it, they can click on it and they can see what Tom wrote up.
And that would be signatured by Mr. Burrell himself and authored by him. We would need his permission to put his statements on our website.
Wait a minute. We don't have to have an author if he doesn't want to have it. That information is either true or not true. Okay? If Tom wants to take ownership of it, that's great, but he might not want to. Okay,
Well,
so don't
Counselor,
dictate. Don't dictate.
Counselor, I'm not
Just,
dictating.
can we put that on the website?
I'm asking Counselor Burrow to author it because I'm not sure if it's been vetted.
Okay, okay, I'm going to move. Just let me finish my questions and answers, and we can all ponder the little idea you just offered. Okay. The other thing I wanted to say is from now on, when we hire Estherbrook for any services related to labor or anything else, I want us to know about it because as far as I'm concerned, their activities related to our contracts, our labor contracts, and anything to do with the whole police reform, social justice stuff was, in my opinion, unprofessional and biased. Okay, so I would like the city to consider a relationship with Gibson Dunn rather than Estherbrook for those kinds of activities. If the city wants to continue to use Estherbrook and Hancock or Hancock and Estherbrook for environmental stuff, that's fine. But I'm also going to request that we know we get a budget before we do this, okay? Because they work for city council primarily, and it's and also for the city manager. But I am concerned about our legal costs, and I am concerned about, in my opinion, the deficiencies we've had in legal advice in a number of areas. Let's see, outside counsel, ISO, zoning. Also, could we have an idea of when the zoning project is going to be complete? How long is this going to go on for? Are we going to go into next winter without the project done? So I'd like a date on that. I think that's it for me.
I have Counselor Peeler, then Counselor Salamandra, and then Counselor Galanese.
So, beginning of what Ken was talking about when he started following the money of the economic development, the GEDC, I want to applaud that because I think we really need to start following the money or the lack thereof. And I think that's going to be really important when we track and trace not only our revenue coming in, but our loss going out, or our expenditures with very little measurable ROI, or ROI that's so far out into the distance that we actually can't track it because it'll be a generation later or something to that extent. So on the point of I guess you can call it the solvency of the GEDC, because they operate on a loss, and they're now being managed by Metro Collective, or in part working with Metro Collective. And on Metro Collective's resume is Port 100. Is Port 100 also operating at a loss and or is not yet solvent?
I should say it's a very different operation. We do not know if it's currently operating at a loss. We do know in the previous management company, we did see a loss. A lot of it went into the repairs that were needed in the building. So you will get this is an IDA operated, so we can get you information as what you would like. But the Metro, if you would like to speak with Craig Webster and learn about their properties that they own in Rochester, they have turned around buildings that did not, you were in a very much harder place than our GEDC is. And they have a remarkable track record on that. So happy to get you connected if you're wanting to have a conversation with them to learn more about their business. But I would prefer, if you guys would like, Ken is the IDA liaison. If you want to talk with him about things, we can always have him talk with the IDA. The IDA has been very, very proactive as an organization, really focused on the GEDC. They made some good choices this year to really work hard on this building. And so so I would channel things, you can talk with Adam and I, or you can talk with Ken and to get more information.
Great. Yeah, because the reason why I ask is because in 2019, council cut the funding for the Port 100 facility. And I believe in 2020, we did not fund the Port 100 facility. And I believe that is what evoked you to go look for exterior funding or external funding for the Port 100 facility, because they were at some sort of financial risk, because council on both years did not fund them. Right?
We actually had, when Port 100 was designed, the goal was to give birth to it and let it go. And so that did happen. It got birthed, got our energy and attention. City council did fund for a number of years and then let it go. They were still in growth mode, and it was actually Mike Manikowski who cared about Port 100, wanted for the county to have additional co-working spaces. And he's the one that said, you know what, I really want to be investing in this as a county because it's an important endeavor. And so the county sought out Port 100 to invest in it.
Oh, I was under the impression you sought out them. It was the other way around?
It was the other way around on this endeavor. They saw it as a value for the county. And I would agree.
Okay. All set, Counselor? Ready to move on? Counselor Salamandra and then Counselor Galanese.
Quickly, I would like to
Counselor
echo what Counselor Camera said about the legal relationship with Estabrook Hancock or vice versa. I was surprised to see that we were paying for that last week. And I also was very concerned with the non-legal opinion that we were getting from our legal experts, which I tried to voice and was muted by the mayor 3 times. So I would like to say that I too think we should be seeing the why we're paying for this, and also keeping a close check on what we will take as a legal opinion. I think it was very inappropriate.
Councilor Galanese and Councilor Burrow. You're muted, Councilor Galanese. There you go.
Okay, all set. Everyone hearing?
Yep.
So I just got 2 more quick questions. When we're economic development has been brought up, and I something that concerns me that I know has been a long process, but I'd like some answers. I asked this question back, I think 4 or 5 council meetings ago. I'd like to know going into 2021, what is the goal and expectations of 29 Linden Street? We talk about like the Dove Block, but I'm concerned driving by there all the time. It's a small building. It shouldn't be in the state that it's in. At this point, I feel like we've given them chance after chance after chance. What are we going to do with that? And what's the plan?
At the last council meeting, I did go over the history and next steps on that, and I can absolutely send that out to you all as well to see that in writing.
I feel
So
enough.
there's a lesson learned there.
I'm still talking, Councilor Camara. Thank you. But I think enough is enough there. We've been lenient enough with him. We need to move on. And also, I'd like to know McDonough Park, with COVID hitting us like it did, I'd like to know the loss of revenue or the lack of revenue for McDonough Park.
Okay, Councilor Burrow.
Yeah, so 2029 Linden could be a measurable loss. But I want to get back to Ken and Councilor Peeler. I think the GEDC should be a work session topic provided by the IDA. So we can kind of examine that operation. There are several businesses in there that are not incubator businesses. There's a business in there that's been there over 10 years. And this building is designed to be an incubator. And incubators need to have timelines on them with financial reports given to determine whether they actually need a financial break to get them off the ground. There's many businesses in there that are well off the ground. So anyway, I think it'd be a wonderful work session topic presented by the IDA, so we can make some decisions on how we're actually managing that operation with the IDA, and if we should even own that building. And then the other thing, if Sage could give me an update on how are we doing with the code enforcement hiring, so we can give Neil Brayman some much needed help.
Neil, Brian, and
I am worried about Neil Brayman. I'm worried about the code enforcement department. We really need to focus on that and to help the community out. So I'm just kind of interested in an update on that.
Yeah, so we didn't have a good turnout on the resume, so we've extended. We are still taking applications for building inspectors. We did have some feedback that folks that were interested in applying were concerned as probationary that they could get cut from the budget in 2022. And we did have some non-applications on that too. So we are back out on the streets trying to get more people interested in coming to work for us, because we do enjoy, what we do, and want to see somebody that would be interested in that. So please pass the word that we are still accepting. The county goes through the county, but applications for that through this month.
I mean, if you look at the number of permits and you look at the number of complaints in your report and you look at the staffing, I mean, we really need to be aggressive here.
We do. And Joe Venuti is also taking on a lot of those, as well as others in public works.
Yeah.
It's been a heavy lift for everybody. So we need everyone's help to get applicants in the door so we can be able to hire someone.
Yes, great. Thank you.
I see Councilor Galanese and Councilor Salamandra.
I just wanted to, since Tom brought it up, I have the question. Since Mr. Cosentino had left, retired, is Neil acting as our in-house engineer now?
He is. He's got two hats on, or multiple.
Did we give him a bump in pay?
He has a stipend right now for doing that. Yes.
Okay.
Councilor Salamandra.
I liked what Tom was saying about scheduling that work session to hear more about that. We haven't addressed that. I think we kind of left it up in the air, and I had volunteered to do a thing on housing. I'd like to hear it. I'd need time to prepare. So when will we know what the next, our next work session will be? And do you want to take consensus on whether we all agree with Burrow's idea or whoever had it?
And I would love to talk to the IDA as well, because that's the other partner and that would be in the discussion with you is, and I'm sure they would want to, but it's, Adam and I serve on that role too, but it is their building and operation. So we'll do that conversation with them and then get some viable timeframes for what would work with them as well. And I think the mayor was charged with setting up the county, and that does look like March 1st. So,
Yeah, I had an action item to reach out to the county supervisors to do a meet and greet. And right now I have 2 out of 3 responses. It looks like our March 1st meeting, we will have the county supervisors there for a informal meet and greet to get a good understanding of their role at the county level and just to kind of get some initial interactions going without any action items. So that will be part of our March 1st work session. We can add more to it, definitely. That won't be the whole work session. Councilor Peeler, I see you raising your hand in the dark.
I want to be left in the dark, Mr. Mayor. So is that meeting that you're talking about with the meet and greet with the county, is the expectation that they'll also be including data on material and financial contributions, or is that going to be later down the road?
That'll be later down the road. Really, we just need to work, our council needs to work on establishing a relationship with our city supervisors. And from there, then we can work on working towards projects, data, whatever we want to work towards.
Right, and that information's all public. It just requires wrangling, correct?
The data portion?
The data portion of what the contributions are.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know I don't have it, and I can't find it in our budget, and I can't find it in Ontario County's budget. So it must be behind staff.
Some learning opportunities there, yeah. Okay. Councilor Cameron.
I've had time to think about my request to have that ISO information put on the website, and I feel very strongly about it being there. We have polluted a council meeting. It's fine for people to want their fire engine, okay? But in the process of having that discussion, we polluted the conversation with misinformation, of which both the mayor and the chief were parties to it, okay? So I will stack my reputation to anybody that thinks I have one on the information that Tom Burrow provided to us. As far as I'm concerned, it is 99.9% accurate, and it deserves to be on the website, and he doesn't need to have to attribute anything if he doesn't want to. I think that is an important thing, that we be a place where the truth doesn't die.
Thank you for your opinion, Councilor. Anybody else? Okay, motion to adjourn. Councilor Galanese, second by Councilor Peeler. All in favor?